Welcome to the Multifamily Investor Nation podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Elkins-Hutton. I'm the Director of Investor Education here at PassiveInvesting.com. And with us today, we have Lee Yoder. Lee, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Whitney. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we dive into the details of your property that we're going to discuss today, which is Williams Point Apartments, a 95-unit multifamily in Cincinnati, Ohio, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the multifamily space.
Yeah, sure. I'm a physical therapist by trade. Was doing that. I was actually doing home health physical therapy. Kind of got a little bored. So the company I was with brought me in as a clinical director. Over 6 months later, a year later, I was doing no physical therapy. I was in the office. It was a startup company in the healthcare staffing space. And so I was kind of helping build a division and started to feel like, man, this is more what I feel like God created me to do, is more like building something kind of entrepreneurial, but then didn't feel like that's where I wanted to be either. Climbing the corporate ladder, kind of maybe something was awakened inside me, felt like I wanted to do my own thing. So kind of looking like, well, what can I do? Stumbled upon real estate, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, like so many, and a bunch of others, started listening to podcasts, like this one, and thought, okay, my dad's in construction. So for a lot of reasons, real estate kind of spoke to me. So I thought, well, I'll go back to home health physical therapy, but I'll do real estate on the side. So took a pretty big pay cut, went back to, but with that pay cut, I now had the flexibility and the time to get into real estate. So left in 2016, got into real estate in 2017, flipped a house. Kind of always knew I wanted to get into multifamily, mostly because just the books I read and the podcasts I listened to. I felt like that's, where guys and girls, had been doing it. So that's where you want to go. And so kind of just slowly built that up, did a couple small multis with some friends and family. And then we started syndicating in 2021. And we've done a few apartment buildings, one of which we're going to talk about today.
Well, excellent. Well, let's dive into the details. How did you find this property? Let's talk about, when did you acquire the property?
Yeah, I acquired this just under a year ago, May of last year. May of 2022 is when we got it.
Ooh, right before all the interest rate fun.
Yeah, that's part of the story for sure. Yes, right in the middle of the interest rates shooting up.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, so how did you find the deal?
Yeah, so this one, nothing special. The two we had gotten before this, we were able to kind of get like that pocket listing where the brokers had it, but they just brought it to 5 or 6 girls who were interested, 5 or 6 guys and girls, sorry, who were interested, maybe in one of them. But this one was totally listed. So there were 16 offers, then 11 to the best and final, and then another best and final. So all that. So I did nothing special to get this one.
Well, okay. So how did you structure the deal? Like, do you have partners on the deal? Like, how did you structure the deal before you put in the offer?
Yeah, we syndicated it. So I have a partner, a business partner, and we're the general partners. And then we bring in limited partners, investors, they bring the capital, we bring the deal, and we take it down together.
And so you and your business partner, are you guys splitting the general partnership 50-50 or some sort of other arrangement?
Actually, we're 70-30.
70-30? Okay,
yep.
Awesome.
Yep, I'm more full-time. My wife also helps. And so, yeah, that's why.
All right. Now I want to get into more of that partnership structure later, and whatever you're willing to share on that. But how did you get to the offer? Like, when did you decide you saw this property? There's obviously a lot of competition. A lot of people are putting in offers. Like, how did you decide that you actually wanted to dive deeper on this property and that this was actually the one for you to put in an offer on?
Yeah, great question. So, back in this time, today is totally different, Whitney, but back then, so many deals were coming out and they were all way overpriced. So I felt like I was always getting deals, always looking at them, and I was like crossing them off pretty quick. This one came over and met a lot of the things. Like, one thing we really like is to be as close to 100 units as possible because we want somebody on site. So, 95, so it's kind of right there. Maybe a little smaller. Sure, I'd love for it to be 130, 140, because probably one property manager could still handle that much. So maybe it'll run a little heavy, but it was about the right size. We're located here in Cincinnati and Dayton, so this is where we buy. So local, so kind of the size and the location is the first thing. I like brick. I don't like flat roofs. This is brick. It doesn't have flat roofs. Those are kind of some of the big things. And then the price, Whitney, was like you look at a bunch of deals. This is what I think you have to do. You have to look at a ton of deals and you finally look at one and you go, that's not so crazy as all the others. Like that price is not as insane. Let me look in this a little more. And that's kind of what this one was. And honestly, ended up calling the broker and I said, where do you when it's listed like this back then, at least it was like, all right, we know there's going to be a best and final. We know, so you're kind of like, what do you think it's going to take to get to the best and final? And I think his answer was 5.6. Well, I felt like I was pretty comfortable all the way up to 6 million. So I'm thinking, yeah, okay, yeah, I have no problem writing an offer for 5.6. So that's kind of what I liked about it and how I came to actually making an offer on it.
Did you go and visit the property or walk the property at all before putting in an offer?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They had some times I met the broker out there, walked some vacant units, met the property manager and the regional manager of the property management company that was managing at the time. So got an idea for the location. I already know the general location because I live here, but I didn't actually know this town. It's a little bit outside the city. So seeing the immediate location, then walking the property and seeing some units. And I got a good feel for it before we put in the offer.
All right. So, here you have this property. It's not a crazy asking price. And, you're shocked to hear from the broker that, you're probably like $400,000 under where you really probably you are okay, like writing an offer at. So talk to us about how you structured your offer to get to best and final and kind of what tipped you over the edge to get the deal.
Yeah. It was priced to get us to kind of the top 2 or 3. Again, so that and landed at 5.85. So again, I was still very comfortable there. The biggest thing, and I hope this has kind of gone away with the crazy demand going down a little bit, but hard money was a big part of it. So we were willing to do, again, because we know the area very well, just having, lived here, got very familiar with the property. We had a big CapEx budget anyway, so you're not so worried about things scaring you during the inspection when you plan on spending a bunch of money anyway. Like we were going to replace some roofs, we were going to replace the boilers, we were going to replace all the windows and all the decks, things like that. So we did $50,000 hard day one, and then we let another 50,000 go hard after the inspection. So that was big to tell the seller we're very serious. I think we had a pretty good track record, and not that this was only our 4th apartment building, so not a huge track record, but all of them were local. And so we are, we own a good amount just in this area, I guess. And so, and then the seller did do a call with the top 2 buyers, us being one of them. And so, I think I sold us and our company and our plan for the property pretty well. I think they liked, our underwriting, our plan. We were telling them we had already kind of been, somewhat of a pre-approval, or, we had already talked to our bank who we had done our last 2 deals with, which is a local credit union. And, they're ready to do that. So I think that's something, a seller wants to get comfortable that the buyer is going to be able to perform. And a big part of that is getting financing to be able to close. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think we got them pretty comfortable with our track record here in this area, with the financing that we were going to get and how we'd already done that before. And then we had the hard money to let them know, like, we're not walking away from this. And also showing we had a big CapEx budget. So we're not going to be scared if we come on the property and see that we need to do a bunch of stuff, because we were going to spend over $1 million, on the property, and we're well on our way to doing that. So I think those things made the seller really feel comfortable that we were going to do what we said we were going to do, and we were going to close at the price that we were offering.
Okay. All right. Well, and probably, as you say, like reassured him going through the process.
Yeah. Right.
So, all right, you have your offer accepted. What is, you had to put money down hard at the beginning. You had money hard after the inspection period, but walk me through the timeline of that due diligence period, and, and what all had to happen when.
Yeah. So, it's the day we get under contract, the clock starts ticking, right? So we have 60 days, and we did have extensions built in, and we did have to use one of them, just waiting around on the bank like we always do. But immediately, we want to get on the property with our inspector that we always use, professional commercial inspector we always use. We trust him. He's one of these guys, like most of them, like he's not an expert on boilers and like every little thing, but he knows, hey, you need to get somebody out here to check these boilers or something, right? Like he knows enough about everything. So we want to get him on property as soon as possible. We want to go with the property management company, and we want to walk every single unit. So we don't make our inspector go in every single unit, but me, my partner, I think my wife was out there that day, a couple of people from the property management company and our inspector, and we're going and hitting every single unit. I always say, like, we want to open every door. We don't need the inspector to go in and check every outlet in every unit. Like that to me, that's really overkill, because we're trying to get an idea. Is there some electrical problem in the building? Not, is there any out? I mean, if there's an outlet that doesn't work, we can fix that. So same with plumbing. Like if sink's leaking, that can be fixed. I want to know, does he see major issues in the building? So that's kind of the inspection. That it's really important. What we're trying to see there, Whitney, is like, is there something so bad, or are there multiple things that are so bad that it would be better to walk away and lose $50,000 right now than to move forward and lose our investors a bunch of money? And so that's really the most important thing, is to get out on the property. We already know we like the size of the property. We know we like a lot of things about it. We know we like the location. We've decided that we can raise rent, a good amount to get a good return, all these things, but we don't know what inside all the units looks like and things like that. So that's really important. We get past that, and now we know we definitely want to purchase the property. And so then we're really focused on the financing. Now we're getting them everything as soon as we can, because we know banks always take forever. So get them everything they need as soon as possible, and then just keep pushing them along. We get the appraisal as soon as they're ready to do that. We're just trying to move everything along, but that inspection is really the biggest piece to decide, are we sure we want to go forward with this? And then we're really fine tuning our CapEx budget of all the things that we want to do, talking to our inspector, talking to we get contractors out during that time, go ahead and get bids. Because not only do we want to know for ourselves, but we want to be able to tell our investors, and that's how we make our projections to our investors. Hey, here's the returns. Well, that's based on, are we raising $1 million? Are we putting $1 million in this property? Are we putting $1.5 million in this property? Their returns are going to be different. So we're really fine tuning our underwriting and our CapEx budget so that we can tell our investors what to expect. So that was a lot, but that's all we're trying to do there during the period from, contract to closing.
All right. So you had 60 days to close. And so how long was the inspection period?
30
days. Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic. And so you had budgeted in your offer, kind of like a rough idea, that you were going to put in $1 million. You already knew you were going to have some CapEx from that first walkthrough. Yep. What did you uncover during the inspection? Did you have to adjust your capital expenditure budget? Was it over? Was it under? Did you come in right on target?
Really, it was pretty close to on target. We settled in on 1.25, and we were right around there, 1.2 or something going in. We might have shifted a couple things. We were pleasantly surprised with the shape of the units themselves. The seller had done some unit turns, and we thought they were doing good unit turns. That's always nice, right? We don't have to go in and redo these. They're doing a good job. I think they had done 20, maybe 21, and they'd done a good job. So we were really happy with that. And then the other units, we thought, yeah, I mean, they're going to need new flooring and, update that, and they're going to need painted. But we can keep some of the cabinets and paint those and things like that. So we were pleasantly surprised with the units. I think the parking lot was a little worse than we thought, and ended up thinking, okay, that's something we need to do earlier. We actually ended up not doing some of the roofs, and we had a contractor come out and said, these aren't going to last, 5 or 10 years, but it's not something you need to do right now. There's no leaks and no reason. So backed off on some of that. We weren't sure about the boilers. They went and confirmed that, yep, you're going to need to put that in your budget. Sooner rather than later, replace all the boilers. But yeah, pretty close to what we thought, Whitney.
Okay. I had to replace the boiler in one of my units last year. Not fun.
Yeah, not fun. But they do the job. They do heat up a building pretty well.
They do. All right. So how did you finance the deal? You mentioned that that was one of the reasons why you had to burn one of the extensions. Okay. But so let's talk about the deal, like how you financed it, and then talk about what happened in that timeline that caused you to have to push for that extension.
Yeah. So we've done a couple deals like this. With the local credit union here in Cincinnati, we got 80% of the purchase price and also 80% of our rehab budget. So the bank gave us, 80% of the all in, and then we raised, the other 20% from our investors. So we started out. So when we got under contract in March, the bank gave us, a term sheet. And again, this was our third loan that we've done with them. And so we were at 3.875% interest on that loan. So great loan. It was a little bit higher than we'd had with them before, but great loan. The appraisal came back. When the appraisal comes back and it appraises for more than your, purchase price, and then they did as completed appraisal to see, is it going to be worth more than your all-in price? And it was. And so, we're thinking, great, that was the last piece we were waiting on, let's close. Well, then, Whitney, interest rates are like screaming higher at this point. And we just saw like, they just started acting differently. They were just clearly like kind of nervous, just like tightening up. People talk about banks tightening up. I mean, we felt that, we saw that, and they just asking more questions about us and this, and now what about your other properties again? How's the cash flow there? Like, just all these questions I would have been happy to answer 60 days ago. They're asking us right before. And then a week before closing, they changed our interest rate on us. Something I never expected out of them, but they raised it 0.5%. So 4.375, up from 3.875. So I'm happy with that loan today. I know a lot of people would love to have that loan, but I was mad at the time because, we had to go back to our investors and say, hey, because we had already raised the money at this point. And we said, you need to know that our interest rate's gone up. What that equates to on this deal, Whitney, was $22,000. So just a rise of 0.5% on this, close to $6 million deal is $22,000 per year. So $22,000 that we thought we were going to share with our investors, now the bank takes, right? So it's significant. And then I think we had actually already extended our closing, and they told us, hey, they weren't going to have us keep anything in reserves at their bank, but they said, we're going to take $180,000 of your proceeds and we're going to keep it in a separate account for a year. So that was news to us. I mean, we were going to probably close, Whitney, with like 220,000 in our account, which what that allows us to do is like float the CapEx project. So, right, like we may get windows and the guy says, well, I need $100,000 to get started. Well, here you go. Here's $100,000. Give this guy 50. And then we go to the bank and say, hey, we paid out 150. Here's the receipts. Give us 150, right? So that's what that 220 allows us to do. And they took 180 of that. 40,000 is not going to allow you to do that. So we had to raise some more money. And again, so we have to let our investors know, hey, we're raising some more money. So the projections we gave you have changed a little bit because, the bank said they're keeping $180,000. So it did give us more security, right? Like, coming up this May, we'll get that $180,000 back and that's going to feel good. And we're just going to have really, really good reserves. So it was okay. But those are the things that were, it was really hard and messy and something I didn't expect, but I've never invested during a time like this when interest rates rise like they did. So this was a learning experience, but we were able to fight through it and still get the closing.
So when the interest rate rose and you went back and adjusted your financial model, there was the impact of, holding those reserves at the bank and needing to raise additional capital. But like, how did that shift the return to your investors, and what type of communication did you have with them?
Yeah. So I sent out a very thorough email to really, because I think I told them both things at the same time. Hey, our interest rate went up and we're having 180,000 of our proceeds put over here. So we are going to raise more money, kind of, really tried to lay it out for them. Sometimes it's good to see that on paper. The nice thing, Whitney, and really what I was able to tell them was in the 2 months, and it'd been like maybe more like 6 weeks since we had, presented to them, the rent at the property, like all over the country, was just screaming higher. So we were able to tell them, hey, we're actually going to adjust our projected income at the property, our projected rent, based on what we're seeing. I mean, we were already hitting like end of year one in that time of close. It was really kind of insane, the rent growth. So that was the communication, was to say, here's the negative, but here's the positive. And frankly, we said all that, put those things together. We're actually not going to adjust the projections. And we're able to show the math behind that. So that was a good story of like, hey, inflation is really hitting everybody. And the bad part of inflation is the banks are raising our interest rate and making us keep some reserve. The good part of inflation is rent rises in an inflationary environment, and rent is screaming higher at this property. And so we're already adjusting our projected rent because, what they've done and the units that they put in or filled while we're closing is showing us that it's going to be much higher. And that's shown true today. So that was the communication with the investors.
Well, let's talk about the investors. Let's talk about it. So you have, you have your business partner, but you also raised a certain amount of capital from your investors. I'm seeing the bank loan was probably like around 4.6, 4.65, somewhere in there.
Yeah, right in there. I think you nailed it. And then we raised 1.8.
Okay. And
Yep.
so how did you structure that deal with your passive investors?
Yeah, so what we've done so far, and I think this will adjust as we get into bigger deals, but we do an 8% preferred return to them. And then we split the profit or the equity 50-50 on top of that. There's no extra waterfalls or anything complicated. It's just they get 8% at least. And then anything beyond that, we split 50-50 in the cash flow. And, when we sell the equity, we split 50-50. Pretty
Okay.
simple.
All right. And then, so you're completing a value add, a heavy value add on this particular property. What is your game plan as you move through your business plan? Like, are you looking to refinance, sell? Like what are you looking to, how does that impact your investors?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way we always put it to our investors is I'll show them, kind of the easiest way to show returns is that we're going to sell, right? It's kind of clean cut. So I always say, here's what a 5-year, I always want them to plan for at least 5 years. If we sell earlier, it's because the market went crazy and we made you a bunch of money a lot earlier than we thought, and you'll probably be happy with that. But let's say it takes 5 years. In the loan we got too, I didn't mention that. It's a 5-year balloon. So we have fixed interest for 5 years. So we got that fixed interest rate for 5 years. So within 5 years, we need to refinance or sell, and we're going to be happy to do that. So we'll show our investors, here's your return if we sell in 5 years. That's clean cut. It's pretty simple. Then we do show them, if we decide to refinance instead of sell, here's what that's going to look like with a refinance at 5 years, hopefully getting you all your money back, but you stay in the deal, you keep the same ownership, equity, stake, and then we hold for another 5 years and we sell at 10 years. So we show them both, like what it's going to look like, because we want them to be prepared for either and happy with either, right? So that's kind of what we try to show them. And then we just said, if we decide to sell in 2 years, we're going to sell in 2 years, but it's going to be because we're maybe meeting our 5-year projections in 2 years or something like that. But what's going to drive that, Whitney, is really the market. If interest rates are low, but we're in a recession, and so there's not much demand for multifamily or other assets, that's probably a good time to refinance and hang on to it. If interest rates are low and there's tons of demand, like we've seen the past, that's a good time to sell. So we do make sure they know it's market dependent. We do make sure they know we make that decision, and we try to show them this is what it looks like if we sell in 5 years. Here's what it looks like if we refinance.
Awesome. So were there any, kind of backing up, were there any other issues that came up through due diligence? We've had, a little bit of expansion in the CapEx budget, but, the parking lot, issue crept up. We've got the adjustments on the financial modeling with the interest rate rising and the need to hold additional capital in the bank. Was there anything else that came up through due diligence?
We did. So, I'll give you one other one. They had the Federal. Have you heard of the Federal Pacific electric panels? That's a big thing in the Midwest. But these type of electric panels have kind of been outlawed. And they just don't make them anymore. They were shown to be a little bit higher about fire hazard. So a lot of insurance companies don't like them. So the current owner had insurance on it, and he'd only bought the property like 2 years ago, and so he got insurance. So you don't have to, but there was an idea of like, hey, you're going to get better insurance if the insurance company knows that you're going to replace those. And then also it does look better when you sell that you don't have Federal Pacific, because everybody kind of has that idea. And especially if you wanted to try to sell to maybe more institutional buyer or something like that, they don't like that. So that was something that we actually didn't have. We thought maybe we could get away with not doing. And the more we got into it with our insurance company, it was like, this is probably a good decision. You get a better insurance quote, which, affects your NOI, right? So that's helpful. And then just probably better for selling. Banks like it better too. So that was one other little hiccup that we thought, yeah, probably go ahead and spend, because I think that ended up being 60,000 or so. So it wasn't nothing. It was a, little pricey, but we felt like worth doing long term.
Awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and wrap up here. We've already talked about the raising capital piece, but what did you find that was easy during the process that you thought was going to be harder? And then conversely, what did you find that was harder that you thought was going to be easier?
Sure. The easier part, Whitney, was the property management company that was already operating the property. So they'd been operating the property almost a year for the seller, and they were new to us. So they're well known in Cincinnati, but I've never worked with them, because actually this was our first property in Cincinnati. The other 3 are up in Dayton. So we were working with a smaller property management company that was only in Dayton, and we really didn't want them to take this property. So we were open to keeping the same property management company, but we'd not worked with them before. And so I thought there'd be I thought it'd be kind of tough to learn how to work with them. And I was a little bit just worried about how they'd operate and things like that. That's gone so much better than I could have hoped for. And what I'll say about that, Whitney, is, this really gets into the reason why and we're not unique in this. I feel like everybody that, has been in this game for a while, they want 100 units or more. And the reason that is, I think that the number one reason is because you can have a property manager on site. That property can afford a property manager on site. And the reason it's been easier than we thought was because of the girl we have on site. She is a stud. She owns this property. She cares about the property. She cares about the residents. The regional manager is great too. She works really hard, but honestly, she doesn't have that much to do with it. It is the girl on site that drives this property. And she was great during the closing period, getting us what we needed. And we could tell already, like, man, this girl's on the ball. She's organized. And then since she's the reason the property has done so well. And that's so important. So now, Whitney, I'm like, I don't know how I could ever buy something less than 100 units. Now I probably will, because there's less competition, or less big money competition. I love the 100 unit plus, but then I see the price that some of these guys are willing to pay, and I don't want to pay that. So, but anyway, that was definitely easier than we thought. I'll say what was harder, Whitney, was raising the capital. This was the fourth deal we'd done in about 16, 18 months. And, but we kept growing our investor base, and seeing that investor base grow and having talked to our investors, I really felt like this is going to be easy. And it wasn't. None of ours have been real easy. We kind of got halfway there pretty easy. But then, I pulled out my spreadsheet of my investors and made some calls. And, it's just getting people to really pull the trigger, and whether they're ready or not. And, have you answered their questions? And sometimes, like, it's just not top of mind to them. Investing $25,000 or $50,000 might not be that big a deal to them. And they might think, yeah, I'll do that. And then they just kind of don't get around to it. And you have to call them and, like, yeah, that needs to happen now. Like, go ahead and do that now if you want to do that. So that was harder. That's always it's been a stressful thing for us. God has provided, and we've been able to raise the money for all of our deals, but it wasn't easy. And I kind of got a big head and thought this one would be easier, and it wasn't, but we did get the job done. So that was good.
Persistence, consistency,
Yep.
and persistence, right?
Yeah.
You and I have done several podcasts together, so I know we have the same philosophy in that. Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining us today and providing your experience and insights with us. If listeners want to reach out to you and follow you, what is the best way that they can make contact with you?
Yeah, I would love for them to reach out. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook too. So you can just look up Lee Yoder. And then jump on our website, threefoldrei.com. That's THREEFOLDREI.com. We've got a free ebook and a bunch of other stuff there. So yeah, check out our website.
Excellent. Well, Lee, thank you so much for sharing your time here with us today. We look forward to following you and having you back on future podcasts.
I'd love to come back, Whitney. The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.